Now, one thing about how do you generate something when it's dead flat? The people in the trucks, in the rollers, decide for you, okay? These are what are called traces in the land, and you always imagine it's shepherds and sensitive sorts. The rednecks are also very good, at topography. And we did not know where you entered this, okay? But the rednecks somehow always crossed here. They entered the site here. Okay.
This was a nude beach, by the way.
This was a nude gay beach.
Well, nude gay beach?
Yeah. Enter here, and then we have two things. This was the only two places of character. So that's all we had on the site, is where the rednecks entered, low point, and to the high point. The other critique of Seaside is that the town square was too big, the central square, because the trees didn't grow, which would have necked it down. But the Ruskin square was excellent, the spatial definition. So we put Ruskin squares here and here. So you get the small, you get the very small. The other thing by the way, when we get to Alys Beach, you will see that this too is too large. See this square, which is half the size of Seaside, is still too wide, height to width ratio. So what we're doing in Alys is we don't have on the other hand, the street we're about to walk down has good spatial definition. In Alys, we dispense altogether with the square. Okay, the thing about density. This is a really, really dense place. It feels dense. You're going to see what I call Asiatic densities. You can actually film Hong Kong films, probably 10 units to the acre. It's 10 units to the acre. So when people are going around and saying, oh, we need 13, or we need 15, or we need 20, you're not talking about Americans. Don't push that envelope. This is 10 to the acre with 3-story buildings and plenty of tiny little lots, 2,800 square foot lots. And people, the rain drips, okay, on these roofs. That's how tight this is. So be very careful with higher densities, because you're completely eliminating housing. And this has very few open spaces. It doesn't have a school, with a playing field. And that's 10 units to the acre, so be careful with that.
It's 10 very large units to the acre. That's the other thing to take into consideration here. Being the next generation new urbanist community, it started out at a very high price point, thanks to Todd's giving them courage to start out at prices that were just under Seaside prices.
You got it absolutely right. It was incredibly high prices.
And that, of course, drove much bigger houses. The first Seaside houses were tiny. They were 800 square feet, including a 400 square foot porch, that kind of thing. And now they're big. The monster houses are being put in their place, but for the most part, Seaside feels more. It's the same density, maybe slightly higher, but the houses are much smaller.
The other thing that another mistake here, which now that they now acknowledge, none of the retailers got any slack at all. No breaks, no nothing. The accountants of Lucadia, big corporation developers, just didn't understand that retail has to be incubated. So whatever survived here is just, right? It was tough going. It also took this hotel 4 years to be built. It's very destructive. Pavement, which everybody believes in, it has proven to be a disaster. If I had recommended it, I would be in lawsuit from A to Z, because the trucks break it up, as you can see. Yeah. Virtually all the pavement here has had to be redone. Okay, that's shit. That porous concrete is crap. And they still, I bring them here and they say it's crap. I say, well, you did it wrong. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Do not use this stuff. What Todd is referring to is we had two types of pavement. Because they use the same pavement on both, it's very hard to read street and alley differences. You often don't know whether you can run a street and an alley.
Particularly in early phases, because our prices were so high, in order to meet the construction, people would build their carriage houses first. So you come into Rosemary in the first phase, and it looks like a subdivision. Two-car garage with a unit above, and there's no differentiation between the streets and the alleys.
Yeah,
very tough.
So that's tough. And by the way, that was the great breakthrough, is to allow, since this is a land sales operation, if you allow people in for less, which is what Todd is referring to, perhaps he came up with this, is you build the carriage house first, so they can get in early, but they still pay you full price for the land. What I would do now is exactly the opposite. I would allow the front to be built and an extendable house, so we completely overcome that. The key is the extendable house, not the outbuilding first.
On Seaside, they built a screen porch and they lived in that.
Yeah, more like that.
And that looked just fine.
Because this was a really weird place. Like Todd and I would give tours and say, Okay, let me explain where you're standing. This is an alley. So don't do that. Yeah, it's a front. I heard this yesterday. That was sold for $8 million and scraped.
Wow.
Oh, and that was a show house that they scraped.
Right.
Scraped.
No
Because
way.
it was too small.
Hey, you wanted to know about Succession? Well, it's
Okay,
not-
there.
You'll
It
see
was
it now.
completely
It's
nuts. I mean,
newly
this house was
demolished.
so big,
And I said, what
and
happened
so
there?
fancy.
What happened there? $8 million and scraped.
So is it mostly a resort? Because Seaside had...
This is actually getting more full-time faster than Seaside.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because the
do you
house
think
is
that
bigger.
is?
The watercolor,
Yeah.
which you really should wander around and look at, it's not on the tour,
Yeah.
also has a lot more permanent residents because Seaside was built as a collection of beach shacks with new plumbing and new wiring. Our code really...
How many people are there? About 40 now at Seaside?
There are 40
Quasi.
families. It's probably 100 people.
Quasi. It's becoming San Fran.
actually got
Berkeley was a
video.
resort too. Like Miami was a resort. You begin one way and you end another, frankly. Because the buyers haven't retired yet. They can't give up their lives to come here. But ultimately they will. You should be ready for that. This can't be like Seaside because then it would be second rate. So let us go through an exercise in which we actually change the aesthetic, change everything, so that it's not like Seaside. And so there's a kind of, this is counter-coded. Like for example, while Seaside has pastel colors, these are colors. There are very few towers here. It's about running the eaves. The eaves are continuous, which by the way have been ignored. That's a code thing that most people don't understand. And also we realized by studying some houses at Seaside that they wanted more masonry to be able to build more private yards. So you get a style which is masonry on the first floor and wood above. What this place didn't have to do, like Robert and Daryl very, very carefully and against all odds, increased the quality of construction at Seaside. He literally trained, one step at a time, the workers by saying, you build better, we'll pay you more. You build better. And you can actually do an archaeology of Seaside by looking at the technology. And you can see, you can date the buildings by how much. The last ones are built like cabins. And the first ones, I love one little a shack owned by those school teachers in which the nails don't even go all the way in. The nails aren't even there, they still stick out. It was total shit.
On the question of affordability, one of the things that was their discussion in terms of the critique of Seaside. I mean, Seaside actually did a lot of things to allow for affordability with the back cottages, with even the platting of the streets, putting the cheaper houses without ocean views in the tighter lots in the back.
Yeah.
What's happening? What was the thoughts in terms of the platting here?
I think we have a lot more apartments, sixplexes and so forth, which didn't exist at Seaside.
But Lucadia didn't see that as affordable. It saw it as product diversification.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
sure they
No, there's some affordability was not on the table as far as
I would
location.
imagine it was not. But I was wondering whether still there were ways that were you trying
Lucadia,
to?
we just their accountants.
You're doing courtyard houses and pulling parking into a common well.
Yeah.
Remember that first design charrette where we had all the great architects and they were trying to keep them within size limits, but the officials off the lot and using the courtyard form, it just got big.
They feel it's very easy. I must say, not accommodating the car is such a privilege. It's just suddenly, a 40 by 80 foot lot feels like the car, I didn't realize it. It's such a monster, maneuvering it and everything. It wipes out real estate.
And the cars are underground here?
No, they're just
a common court.
By the way, they are going to build this. He cannot survive without building a town center. So he's not only building more up here.
Is that starting now?
Yeah, he's got to do it. Yeah, he's got to do it. They all realize they've got to build a town center because what are you talking about? No, there's only some white architecture. The story's over. The real story really is walking.
You have to walk to something.
So you can't just talk about it.